Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now wanted by two separate judicial authorities, and the newest one comes from inside NATO itself. Turkey has issued an international arrest warrant for the Israeli leader over the armed interception of the Global Sumud Flotilla, the civilian ships that tried to break Israel's blockade and deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. The Istanbul 11th High Criminal Court ordered the arrest as part of a sweeping criminal case, and the charges are not minor. They include genocide, crimes against humanity, torture, aggravated looting, property destruction, hijacking vessels, and unlawfully depriving civilians of their liberty. A member of the Western Alliance has just accused a sitting Israeli prime minister of genocide in a court on paper. And to understand how heavy that is, you have to look at what actually happened on that water. The Global Sumud Flotilla brought together dozens of vessels and hundreds of activists from several countries, Turkey among them, carrying food, medicine, and supplies for Palestinians trapped inside Gaza. Israeli naval forces intercepted the flotilla in international waters, boarded its ships, detained its passengers, and took them to Israel before deporting them, with Turkish participants undergoing medical and psychological exams once home. Ankara's argument is blunt. This was not maritime security. It was an unlawful armed attack on a civilian humanitarian mission, and statements from activists, forensic reports, and lawyers' complaints were all folded into the Turkish investigation. This did not appear from nowhere. It has been building for the better part of a year, because the timeline shows a case gaining weight. Domestic detention warrants were first issued in November 2025 for Netanyahu and 37 other Israeli officials. By April 2026, prosecutors had completed an indictment against 35 suspects, seeking aggravated life sentences and additional prison terms that could run into the thousands of years. The names include Defense Minister Israel Katz, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Military Chief Eyal Zamir, and the Israeli Navy commander. And now the international warrant lets Ankara pursue Netanyahu beyond its own borders and request an Interpol red notice. Israel rejects the whole case, calling it a political stunt and insisting the blockade and the interception were necessary security measures. But whatever Israel calls it, the walls of the room are moving closer. Because this Turkish case is separate from the International Criminal Court warrant already issued for Netanyahu back in November 2024 over alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. That is now two tracks, two jurisdictions, closing from different directions at once. Inside Israel, Netanyahu remains protected. He still orders military operations, still travels to friendly states. But outside that shrinking circle, every foreign visit now carries a question he cannot fully answer in advance. Will the welcoming ceremony end with an arrest? A sitting prime minister, wanted by an international court, and now by a NATO member, running a war while checking which borders are still safe to cross. And the pressure is no longer only legal, because Israel's fellow mediators in the Gaza deal are beginning to signal that their patience has a limit too.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his team are increasingly escalating policies that trample on human dignity and are acting in a way that is practically provoking the entire international community. We expect the United States to exert the necessary pressure on Israel.
The Netanyahu administration, which is committing genocide, persists in its illegal actions throughout the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem, right before the eyes of the international community. The systematic policy of military occupation, forced displacement, and the seizure of land is, quite unfortunately, continuing to intensify at an alarming rate. I would like to take a moment to share some very important figures with you here today. According to the latest data from the United Nations, in the year 2024 alone, nearly 3,800 Palestinians have been forcibly displaced from their homes as a direct result of settler terrorism, systematic demolitions, and forced evictions. Nearly 100 of our dear Palestinian brothers have been brutally killed. We have discussed the nature of this situation, which constitutes a systematic and ongoing occupation, and how it deeply affects the Palestinian administration as it attempts to govern its own land. I sincerely hope that the decision to finally hold the long-awaited legislative and presidential elections in Palestine will prove to be truly beneficial for the people. That the elections This will serve to actively contribute toward the ongoing advancement of the internal reconciliation process, most especially among our dear Palestinian brothers and sisters, as well as further strengthening the overall unity and the deep-rooted solidarity shared by all of the Palestinian people. During our meeting held earlier today, we have also once again reaffirmed our unwavering solidarity against the ongoing attacks, the various violations, and the constant provocations targeting the sacred holy sites in Palestinian lands, especially the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Ibrahimi Mosque located in the city of Hebron. We are, in particular, most firmly and resolutely opposed to any provocations intended to alter the status quo at our first Qibla, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and other holy and sacred sites. We shall continue to fight with unwavering determination for the realization of a sovereign Palestinian state. My dear friends, here in Gaza, we are currently facing an Israeli administration that has made total deadlock its primary motto, despite all the previous agreements and the ongoing international efforts. Despite the remarkably constructive attitude shown by our Palestinian brothers, the current Israeli administration unfortunately continues to maintain its deeply uncompromising and aggressive stance. This process clearly demonstrates, just as I have stated on many occasions before, exactly who is in favor of continued conflict and who is genuinely striving for peace.
Turkey and our nation have emphasized the critical necessity of broadening our dialogue and fostering deeper mutual understanding among all nations within this region, as well as the immense significance of the collaborative defense pact recently finalized by Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, which stands as a truly vital and monumental agreement. We sincerely hope this serves as a foundational starting point for a more comprehensive, far-reaching agreement that strengthens regional security and long-term stability while safeguarding the Islamic nation's vital interests. Furthermore, we have always maintained that a just and lasting peace can only be achieved by ending the occupation once and for all, and the formal establishment of a fully independent Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem serving as its capital, and that any potential integration of Israel into the wider region, if it truly so desires, must be firmly linked to the achievement of this specific goal, in full accordance with international legitimacy and the Arab Peace Initiative. I discussed with my brother, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the dangerous Israeli escalation in the West Bank and Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Palestine, and the consequences of the occupation. And then there is the issue of settler terrorism. These settlers do not come alone. They are always being pushed by the Israeli army, and they are always being protected by the Israeli army. And there is the constant expansion of settlements, along with the ongoing violation of our Islamic holy sites. And Christian ones, they don't differentiate. Muslims, Christians, they're all enemies to them. And the seizure of Palestinian funds and the strangling of our national economy.
We exist as a state. Look, I sit behind the plaque that says State of Palestine. We have 160 countries that recognize the State of Palestine, including the great majority of the members of this Security Council. The reality is that one state is illegally occupying the land of the other state. So therefore, we need the international community, the Security Council, to help the State of Palestine that lives under ruthless occupation, illegal occupation, using the words of the International Court of Justice, to help us to end this illegal occupation, as the International Court of Justice said, as rapidly as possible. Of course, we appreciate all efforts to make this occupation less vicious, if there is such thing as that, in the process and in the way and the path of ending this illegal occupation. That is the main objective, ending this illegal occupation. not to make it a nicer occupation. And many of you have exercised that during the time of putting an end to colonial occupation and control in the past. So I don't need to explain to you what you were struggling for in order to attain your freedom and liberation. We are the last kid around the block. We need to end this evil system imposed on us, oppressing us, stealing our resources, killing our children, doing all the evil things that the UN reports describe, all of the agencies of the United Nations describe, and other NGOs, organizations describe as well. So it needs to end. And all people who respect and honor international law and their obligations as members of the United Nations and the principles enshrined in the Charter of the UN is to help us to put an end to this tragedy.
Madam President, while Palestinian terrorists seek to drive Israelis from their homes, some voices in this council speak as though Jews have no right to live in Judea and Samaria. That is not true. We are not occupier, we are not settler. Our right to live in our land is based on our historical connection to it. It is described in the Torah, the Old Testament, and even the Quran mention the connection of Jews to the land. This past week, Jews around the world read this verse from the Torah. I will read it first in Hebrew. כי אתם עוברים את הירדן לבוא לרשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיכם נותן לכם וירשתם אותה וישבתם בה. And in English, you are crossing the Jordan River to inherit the land which God is giving you. You will inherit it and dwell in it. Judea and Samaria is where our story in the land of Israel began. It is where it will continue. There has been a continuous Jewish presence in this land for thousands of years. The name Jerusalem, Hebron, Bethel, they are not names invented by modern leaders or modern politicians. They are part of the DNA of the Jewish people. And this history was recognized by the international community. The League of Nations mandate for Palestine affirmed the historical connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. It called for the founding of a Jewish national home there. The international legal framework established after World War I confirmed that historical connection. That framework included Judea and Samaria. Our history is not a political slogan. It is part of our historical and international record. Madam President, I could lecture for hours about our biblical rights, our historical rights, our legal rights to Judea and Samaria. But if we want to be practical today, and if this Council is serious about bringing security and stability to the region, it must understand a simple truth. We are not going anywhere. Jewish communities will stay in Judea and Samaria, just like the Palestinian communities.
Despite this tragic reality, here within the walls of the Security Council, a number of Western delegations have for months placed the full responsibility for the stalling of the Gaza peace plan solely on Hamas. We all remember how, during Security Council meetings, persistent calls were made for the Palestinian movement's leadership to immediately agree to lay down their arms, not to hinder the work of the National Committee for the Management of Gaza, and to accept the roadmap of the High Representative of the Peace Council, Nikolai Mladenov. I would like to hope that our Western colleagues will show the same unity and resolve regarding the other side of the conflict, given Western Jerusalem's public rejection of the roadmap and Hamas's agreement to the deal. Madam Chair, we have repeatedly noted that the success of any Middle East peace initiative will be measured by achieving the main goal, the creation of a unified, independent and contiguous state of Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza, with its capital in East Jerusalem, a state coexisting in peace and security with Israel.
As the United States has said many times, we strongly condemn violence by any party in the West Bank. The United States appreciates the Israeli government's condemnation of and the increased actions to counter violence in the West Bank. Israel has taken specific steps, such as increasing law enforcement actions, to boosting the IDF presence, and to allocating significant financial resources to counter violence. The United States will continue to work constructively to increase security, reduce tensions, and enhance stability that is beneficial for both Israelis and Palestinians alike. President Trump's 20-point plan to end the Gaza conflict makes clear that the PA must verifiably complete a slate of reforms.